I never thought helping out on my uncle's farm would change my life forever. Growing up in the suburbs, I was just another college kid looking for summer work. When Uncle Joe offered me a spot on his corn farm, my family laughed it off as temporary help. They figured I'd last maybe a week before running back to air conditioning and Wi-Fi. The morning I arrived, the sun was already blazing across the endless rows of green. Uncle Joe stood waiting by his old pickup truck, weathered hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had seen better decades. His farm stretched out like a green ocean, corn stalks swaying in the gentle breeze. "City boy thinks he can handle farm work," he said with a grin that told me he was testing me from day one. I grabbed my work gloves and nodded. Something about this place felt right. The smell of earth and growing things, the sound of wind through the crops, the honest work that waited in those fields. My family back home thought I was wasting my summer, but standing there in that vast expanse of possibility, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. Uncle Joe handed me a hoe and pointed toward the nearest row. "We'll start simple," he said. "Weeding. Every plant you leave behind steals nutrients from my corn. Think you can handle that responsibility?" I looked down that endless row and took my first step into what would become the most important summer of my life. I had no idea that this simple beginning would lead to recognition I never could have imagined. The first week nearly broke me. My hands blistered, my back ached, and my legs felt like jelly every evening, but something kept me going. Maybe it was Uncle Joe's quiet approval when I finished a particularly challenging row, or perhaps it was the way the corn seemed to grow a little taller each day under my care. Uncle Joe taught me everything with patience I didn't deserve. How to read the soil, when to water, how to spot signs of disease before they spread. He showed me which insects were friends and which were enemies. Every morning, we'd walk the fields together, and he'd share knowledge passed down through 3 generations of farming. "Corn's not just a crop," he told me one morning, running his hand along a stalk. "It's a partnership. You take care of it, and it takes care of you. But you can't fake that relationship. The plants know if you're really paying attention." I started paying attention to everything. The way morning dew collected on the leaves. How different sections of the field responded to rainfall. Which varieties seemed strongest against the summer heat. I carried a small notebook, jotting down observations that probably seemed silly to anyone else but mattered to me. My family called every few days, asking when I was coming home. They couldn't understand why I was choosing manual labor over internships at tech companies. But each day in those fields taught me something new about dedication, patience, and the satisfaction of work that actually mattered. By the end of that second week, my blisters had turned to calluses, and I was keeping up with Uncle Joe's pace. Month 2 changed everything. I wasn't just following Uncle Joe's instructions anymore. I was anticipating problems and suggesting solutions. When I noticed aphids gathering on the eastern edge of the property, I researched natural deterrents and convinced him to try companion planting with marigolds. It worked. The corn was responding to my attention in ways that surprised even Uncle Joe. The sections I managed most carefully showed stronger growth, better color, and healthier overall development. I spent my evenings reading agricultural journals and watching farming videos, hungry to learn everything I could. "You're getting the bug," Uncle Joe said one evening as we surveyed the fields. "My grandfather used to say farming chooses you, not the other way around. Looks like you've been chosen." I felt chosen. Every morning I woke up excited to check on my rows, to see how the corn had grown overnight. I started talking to the plants, which sounds crazy, but felt natural. They seemed to listen. My college friends posted pictures from their internships at corporate offices, and I posted pictures of sunrise over the cornfields. They thought I was having some kind of breakdown, but I'd never felt more myself. The corn was reaching full height now, tall and proud and green as emeralds. Uncle Joe started letting me make decisions about fertilizing schedules and pest management. He trusted me with his livelihood, and that trust felt better than any grade I'd ever earned. I was learning that success wasn't just about following instructions. It was about caring deeply enough to notice the details that others missed. Late July brought the worst drought in 20 years. Other farms in the county started showing stress, but Uncle Joe remained calm. He taught me about water management, showing me how to maximize every drop through strategic timing and targeted application. "This is when farming gets real," he said, watching the weather reports with concern. "Anyone can grow corn in perfect conditions. The real test comes when nature stops cooperating." I threw myself into drought management with everything I had. I researched soil moisture retention techniques, adjusted our irrigation schedule 3 times, and even experimented with natural mulching methods I'd read about online. My sections of the farm became my laboratory, and every technique was a calculated risk. The corn in my carefully managed areas began outperforming the rest of the farm. Uncle Joe noticed but didn't say much, just nodded approvingly when he thought I wasn't looking. Other farmers stopped by to check on Joe's crop, and several commented on how well certain sections were holding up despite the challenging conditions. "That nephew of yours knows what he's doing," I overheard one neighbor tell Uncle Joe. "Haven't seen corn look that good in weeks." My family still called it just helping out, but I was beginning to understand that I was becoming something more. The drought was teaching me lessons about resilience, innovation, and the kind of problem-solving that only comes from caring deeply about the outcome. When the rains finally returned in early August, my sections of corn had not only survived but thrived, standing noticeably taller and healthier than surrounding areas. Word spread quickly in farming communities. By mid-August, neighbors were stopping by regularly to see Joe's nephew's corn. The contrast was becoming impossible to ignore. My sections stood like green monuments to careful attention and innovative thinking, while other fields in the county showed varying degrees of drought stress. Agricultural extension agents started visiting. They measured growth rates, took soil samples, and asked detailed questions about my methods. I found myself explaining techniques I'd developed through trial and error, combinations of traditional wisdom and modern research that seemed to create something special. "We're seeing 15% better growth rates in your managed sections," one agent told me. "That's significant enough to write about." The local farming newspaper wanted to do a story. They photographed me standing next to my tallest stalks, and I felt proud in a way I'd never experienced before. This wasn't success that came from beating others. It was success that came from nurturing something to its full potential. Uncle Joe started deferring to my judgment on more decisions. When the county agricultural fair announced their corn competition, he suggested I enter under my own name, rather than his. "This is your crop now," he said simply. "You earned the right to claim it." My family finally visited to see what I'd been doing all summer. They walked through the fields with expressions of surprise and something that might have been respect. My mother ran her hand along the corn silk and admitted she'd never really understood what farming involved. The corn was nearly ready for harvest, and I'd never felt more accomplished in my life. The county fair corn competition was more intense than I'd imagined. Farmers who'd been growing corn longer than I'd been alive brought their best ears, polished and presented with generations of pride behind them. I felt like an outsider, the college kid who'd stumbled into their world just months earlier. But my corn spoke for itself. The ears I selected were uniform, well-filled, and showed the deep golden kernels that come from perfect growing conditions. Uncle Joe helped me prepare my display, teaching me how to showcase the quality that made my crop special. "Remember," he said as we arranged, "this corn represents every morning you got up before sunrise, every problem you solved, every day you chose to care. That matters more than any ribbon." The judging took hours. Experienced farmers examined every entry, looking for the telltale signs of superior cultivation. They measured, weighed, and discussed each submission with technical precision that made me nervous. These people knew corn in ways I was still learning. When they called my name for third place, I felt like I'd won everything. Uncle Joe's proud smile meant more than the small ribbon they handed. But the real victory came afterward, when several veteran farmers approached to ask about my techniques. "First year farming, and you placed third," one elderly farmer said, shaking my head. "That's not beginner's luck. That's natural talent combined with hard work." Standing there with my ribbon, surrounded by people who'd accepted me into their community, I realized I'd found something I never knew I was looking for. This wasn't just a summer job anymore. September harvest was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. The early mornings filled with the sound of combines working through the fields, the satisfaction of seeing months of careful work finally come to fruition. My sections yielded significantly more per acre than the farm average, and the quality was exceptional. Uncle Joe let me handle negotiations with the grain elevator. I researched market prices, understood moisture content requirements, and presented our corn with confidence I'd developed through understanding every aspect of its growth. The buyers were impressed with the quality and offered premium prices for the best lots. "You've got a natural understanding of this business," the grain buyer told me. "Most people think farming is just planting and harvesting. but you understand it's about quality at every stage. The financial results spoke louder than any ribbon. My managed sections generated 30% higher revenue per acre than the farm average. Uncle Joe split the extra profits with me, insisting I'd earned every dollar through innovation and dedication. My family couldn't argue with the numbers. When I showed them the harvest reports and profit margins, their dismissive attitudes about just helping out began to change. They started asking serious questions about my future plans and whether farming might be more than a temporary adventure. I was asking myself the same questions. College seemed increasingly irrelevant compared to the real-world education I'd received in those fields. I'd found something I was genuinely good at, something that challenged me intellectually and satisfied me emotionally. The harvest was ending, but I knew this was just the beginning of something much larger. Instead of returning to college that fall, I convinced my parents to let me defer for a year. Uncle Joe offered me a winter position helping plan for the next growing season, and I jumped at the chance to learn the business side of farming. We spent long evenings analyzing the previous season's data, identifying what worked and what could be improved. I created detailed spreadsheets tracking everything from seed varieties to fertilizer applications to weather patterns. Uncle Joe was amazed by my systematic approach to optimization. "Farming's always been more art than science in my family," he said, reviewing my charts. "But you're showing me how science can make the art better." I enrolled in online agricultural courses, studying soil chemistry, plant genetics, and sustainable farming practices. Every piece of knowledge felt immediately applicable to real problems we faced. This wasn't theoretical learning, it was preparation for the challenges ahead. The local agricultural extension office offered me a part-time position, helping other farmers implement some of the techniques I'd developed. Word had spread about my success, and established farmers were surprisingly receptive to advice from someone who'd proven results. My college friends thought I'd lost my mind, choosing farming over a traditional career path. But I'd found something they were still searching for: work that felt meaningful, skills that were genuinely valuable, and a community that respected competence over credentials. Winter gave me time to dream bigger. I started researching agricultural innovations, sustainable practices, and ways to scale the methods that had worked so well on Uncle Joe's farm. I was thinking beyond just next season. Spring brought new opportunities. Uncle Joe proposed expanding our operation, renting additional acreage based on the success of my management techniques. He offered me a partnership stake in the expanded farm, treating me as an equal rather than just help. The additional land presented new challenges: different soil types, varying drainage patterns, and increased complexity in managing multiple fields simultaneously. But I was excited by the puzzle of optimization at a larger scale. I implemented GPS-guided soil sampling across all our fields, creating detailed nutrient maps that allowed for precision application of fertilizers and amendments. My systematic approach to data collection and analysis was generating insights that improved efficiency and reduced waste. Local media started paying attention to our operation. The agricultural reporter from the regional newspaper wrote a feature story about the college student who's revolutionizing corn farming. The article highlighted how combining traditional farming wisdom with modern data analysis was producing exceptional results. Other young people began reaching out, interested in learning about careers in agriculture. I realized I was becoming an example of how farming could attract educated, ambitious people who might otherwise never consider agricultural careers. The spring planting went smoothly, with expanded acreage and refined techniques based on lessons learned from the previous season. I felt confident that we could replicate and even improve upon our previous success at a larger scale. Standing in those expanded fields, I couldn't help but think about how far I'd come from that first day with a hoe and uncertainty about lasting a week. By midsummer, our operation was attracting attention from agricultural companies and university researchers. Representatives from seed companies visited to see how their products performed under my management practices, and several offered research partnerships. A delegation from the State Agricultural College toured our fields, documenting techniques I'd developed through experimentation. They invited me to speak at their summer agricultural conference, presenting my methods to established farmers and agricultural professionals. The conference presentation was intimidating, but exhilarating. I spoke to 300 farmers and agricultural professionals about precision farming techniques, data-driven decision-making, and the importance of combining innovation with traditional knowledge. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Several large agricultural operations offered me consulting positions, impressed by the measurable results I'd achieved. The financial offers were tempting, but I wasn't ready to leave the hands-on work that had taught me everything I knew. Uncle Joe was proud, but also concerned about losing his partner to bigger opportunities. Don't let success take you away from what made you successful. Sometimes the best opportunities are the ones right in front of you. I appreciated his concern, but I was starting to see possibilities beyond our current operation. The techniques we'd developed could help farmers throughout the region, and I was beginning to understand that success created responsibility to share knowledge with others. The corn was approaching peak health, and everything indicated another exceptional harvest was approaching. But I was also thinking about what came after success, about how to use recognition responsibly. The call came on a Tuesday morning in late July. I was in the fields checking moisture levels when Uncle Joe found me, holding his cell phone with an expression I'd never seen before. "Someone from Midwest Agricultural Solutions wants to talk to you," he said. "Says his name is David Richardson, and he's the CEO." I'd heard of Midwest Agricultural Solutions. They were one of the largest agricultural companies in the region, working with farms across 5 states. I couldn't imagine why their CEO would be calling me directly, but I took the phone with hands still dusty from the fieldwork. "Is this the young farmer everyone's talking about?" Richardson's voice was confident but friendly. "I've been hearing remarkable things about your operation down there." He explained that word of our success had reached his company through multiple channels. Agricultural extension agents, seed company representatives, and farmers throughout the county had mentioned our operation in conversations about innovative farming practices. The consistency of the reports had caught his attention. "I don't usually make calls like this," Richardson said, "but the numbers I'm seeing from your farm are exceptional. Would you be interested in discussing a potential partnership?" I managed to stay calm during the conversation, but inside I was reeling. A major agricultural company wanted to partner with me, the college dropout who'd started with a hoe and determination just over a year ago. Richardson proposed visiting our farm the following week to see our operation firsthand and discuss possibilities for collaboration. After I hung up, Uncle Joe and I looked at each other in amazement. This was beyond anything either of us had imagined possible. David Richardson arrived in a convoy of vehicles that seemed out of place on our rural road. But when he stepped out of his truck wearing work boots and a well-worn baseball cap, I realized he was still a farmer at heart, despite running a major corporation. He spent the entire morning walking our fields, asking detailed questions about every technique I'd developed. Richardson understood agriculture at a technical level that impressed me. This wasn't just a business executive trying to understand farming. He was an experienced agriculturalist, evaluating the quality of our work. "What you've accomplished here is remarkable," Richardson said as we stood among the tallest corn in the county. "But more importantly, you've documented everything in a way that makes it scalable. That's the difference between a good farmer and someone who can transform the industry." He explained that his company was launching an initiative to identify and support innovative farming operations throughout the Midwest. They were looking for partners who could demonstrate both exceptional results and the ability to teach others. Our farm had been recommended by more sources than any other operation they'd evaluated. The partnership offer was substantial: financial backing for expansion, access to cutting-edge agricultural technology, and the opportunity to serve as a model farm for their educational programs. In return, I would work with their team to document and teach the methods we'd developed. "We believe you've developed something special here," Richardson said. "The question is whether you're interested in sharing it with farmers across the entire region." Looking across the fields that had become my life's work, I knew this was the opportunity I'd been unconsciously preparing for since that first morning with Uncle. Richardson made his final offer during lunch at Uncle Joe's kitchen table, the same place where I'd eaten countless meals while learning to farm. The partnership terms were generous beyond anything I'd imagined. A significant upfront investment, revenue sharing on expanded operations, and a salary that exceeded what most of my college classmates would earn in their first corporate jobs. But the phrase that stopped me cold came when Richardson was explaining the deal to Uncle Joe. "Your nephew has created the most profitable and sustainable corn operation I've seen in 15 years of evaluating farms," he said. "This is honestly the best deal in the county, maybe in the state. The best deal in the county." Those words echoed in my mind long after Richardson and his team had driven away. A year and a half ago, my family had dismissed this as just helping out. Now, a major agricultural CEO was calling it the best deal he'd seen. Uncle Joe was quiet for a long time after they left. Finally, he spoke up. "I knew you were special from that first week," he said, "but I never imagined it would lead to something like this." We walked the fields together that evening, the same fields where I'd learned everything that mattered. The corn was nearly ready for harvest, standing proud and tall against the setting sun. This would be our last harvest, before everything changed. "Are you going to take the deal?" Uncle Joe asked. I looked across the acres we'd improved together, thinking about all the lessons these fields had taught me about patience, dedication, and the rewards of caring deeply about your work. "Yes," I said, "but only if you're my partner in whatever comes next." The smile on Uncle Joe's face told me I'd given the right answer. The announcement of our partnership with Midwest Agricultural Solutions made regional agricultural news. The story of the college student who'd become one of the most successful farmers in the county resonated with people throughout the farming community. But more importantly, it opened doors for other young people to see agriculture as a viable and exciting career. We're now managing 1,200 acres across 3 counties, serving as a demonstration farm for sustainable, data-driven agricultural practices. The techniques I developed on Uncle Joe's original fields are being implemented by farmers across the Midwest, and the results are consistently positive. My family finally understands that this was never about just helping out. They see the business I've built, the recognition I've earned, and the impact I'm having on an entire industry. My mother now brags to her friends about her son, the agricultural entrepreneur. But the best part is still the early mornings in the fields, watching sunrise paint the corn stalks gold, and knowing that every plant represents countless hours of careful attention. Success hasn't changed the fundamental satisfaction of growing something beautiful and useful with my own hands. The partnership with Richardson's company has exceeded every expectation. We're profitable, sustainable, and serving as a model for farms throughout the region. But none of it would have happened without that first summer when Uncle Joe trusted a city kid with a hoe and infinite possibilities. Thank you for listening to my story about how dedication, innovation, and a willingness to learn transformed a summer job into the career of my dreams. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where in the world are you listening to this story? Please share your location, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories about finding success in unexpected places.